something. So while you're waiting, 1 minute before I start, have a click on this very secure QR code and go to the survey. But don't fill it in while I'm talking, otherwise you'll put me off. Not really. Pass me my phone, please. I'm going to take a selfie. Thanks. Oh. No, it's cool. Gives me time to do a selfie.
You can still do your selfie. Everybody give it up. Look lively for the picture.
Yeah, come on, another one. 1, 2, 3. reCAP!
That's the picture we want to have for LinkedIn. Thank you, everybody. So great to have you back. And I mean, DJ is already halfway in it, but let me introduce you officially here to the stage. We're happy to have you. So the next 20 minutes are yours. Thank you, DJ.
Thank you very much. Okay, folks, so this next 20 minutes, Daniel just showed us a little bit of a taster of the REPL, just sort of by the by. This session is a gentler introduction to the REPL. My name's DJ. I have no idea what I'm doing, as always, but I think together we can sort of explore a little bit of what is one of, I think, Node.js's underutilized, underloved superpowers that makes us all superpower people, super whatever, super asterisk. So this is just going to be in the REPL. I'm running the tiny sample, which I'll show you in a minute. Remember, there's the facet tiny sample, so it's just a basic implementation of a schema with books in it and a service, catalog service, having a projection on the books there. I'm running the latest external CDS and CDSDK 9.1.0, and actually I'll just show you tree, ANSI, and ignore the node modules directory. So that's what we've got. And by the way, I think anybody who's taking notes, can they please check off that I've mentioned AI in my talk? Thank you very much. Okay, right, okay, so CDS REPL. CDS REPL, thank you for coming to my TED Talk. Okay, I'm done. No, just all kidding. So this is the CDS REPL. It's a little bit daunting, but effectively it's a Node.js REPL in disguise. It's a Node.js REPL, and if we do a help, just like you would do in Node, that's help there, you see all the standard commands plus 2 extra commands that the CAP team, or more specifically Daniel mostly, has added, the .inspect and the .run. Okay, but let's start out gently, fairly gently. We'll use the CDS facade. In Capira, in the CAPI documentation, you'll, I'm sure, have seen sort of reference to the CDS facade, which is basically the global object, a bit like, I suppose, like, a bit like window in browsers. God, I'm digressing already. CDS facade, and if we have a look at that, it's a huge amount of stuff. So the first thing we can learn to do is to sort of minimize information. We've got this inspect command. So actually what we can do is to say .inspect, .depth, equals 0, okay? And we can have a bit of a more condensed view of that. We can also set for the subsequent inspects. And some of the commands that we're going to be doing in the CDS REPL use inspect sort of built in as well. So actually that's quite an interesting and useful thing to do. So now when we do CDS, we get this sort of condensed version. Notice right now that, for example, it's quite small. I mean, you don't know it's quite small because you're not seeing it big, but it's quite small. You have to believe me on that. But also, more specifically, there's no model, there's no DB, there's no services, because we're not really doing anything right now. There are no services in existence. So the other command that we saw very briefly just in the help output just now was a .run. And that's super useful, because I can say basically .run the thing in my local directory, the current directory. And if we do that, that should output something that's very familiar to all of us, hopefully, which is the output from CDS Run or CDS Watch. It's basically, we've started up a CAP survey. It just so happens to be listening on a random port. That's fine. Also, what it gives us is a little bit of an output. It exposes the entities that it finds at in my small brain at the persistence layer, at the DB layer, but it also will expose to the REPL global context any services it can find. And as we saw, how many people in the previous session, including me? Yeah, okay, so you saw very briefly Daniel type in DB. DB is just a service like any other service, okay? So, for example, we can have a look at books. Let's do that. And books is an entity. In fact, let's just increase again. Let's go up here, increase it to 4. Turn the volume up to 4. If we now have a look at books, we can see at the sort of DB level all the things we'd sort of expect to see. What type of thing is it? What kind of thing, I should say? It's an entity. The elements is a set of linked definitions. I'll come on to that a little bit later. And this is using the inspect to show what's inside of books. We can also, for example, have a look at the catalog service. Okay, that's quite large as well. But if Daniel did this as well, which is really cool. If we have a look at the catalog service dot handlers, let's just have a service dot handlers. We could just have a stare at this a little bit more. In CAP, everything is a service. In CAP, everything is an event, okay? And we can see that really a service is just a collection, a family of event handlers. We've got these initial event handlers, which are sort of internal. We've got remember the phases, the before phase, the on phase, and the after phase. This tiny sample facet-based project doesn't have any custom JavaScript. It's got no actions, no functions. So everything we see here actually is built into the framework. Okay. We can also see in the what else do we have in services as well as handlers? We have entities. So for example, we can say catalog service.entities. Now that's not very helpful, is it? That's because again, how many people have looked at the linked definition documentation in CAPIA? Martin, well done, well done. 100,000 points to you. Okay, and anybody else. So the link definition is basically an iterator, which you can't directly have a look at as if it were an array, even though an iterator sort of, becomes an array when you sort of expand it. What you can do, of course, is just say .inspect catalog service.entities, and we can sort of see what's in there. There's only one entity. Notice, I'll compare the two in a minute, this books entity inside of catalog service is the same books entity that we saw before, but it's a little bit different. Think about that, and we'll have a look at that in a second. So if we also, we're in a Node.js REPL, so we can use any JavaScript, not TypeScript, because that's a bad practice, as we know now, any JavaScript that we want. So we can say, for example, object, I can't even type, I'm so excited, I can't type, keys, catalog service.entities. Okay, it's not super exciting, but at least we can see now there's something in it. And of course, we can also use, for example, destructuring. Who doesn't like a bit of destructuring on a Wednesday afternoon? So let's grab books and also call it my books, for example, just to sort of distinguish between the my books variable and the books variable that's been injected into the global REPL context. Let's go to catalog service entities. There. So now, my books, we have the books as far as the catalog service sees it. And then going back before, I said, there's a bit of a difference. Books from the database layer, of course, because the books in catalog service is a projection on there. And depending on the size or depending on the sort of the volume of the .inspect depth, we can see more or less of these, effectively, these queries, okay? Now, what we can do is, for example, as we've got the catalog service, we can use, there are different APIs. There's Tim Toady. How many people know about Tim Toady? Perl programmers, anybody? Yes, there's more than one way. Oh, God, nobody. That felt flat, didn't it? Tim Toady, there's more than one way to do it. Okay, so we can use, for example, the CRUD API, and we can say read my books. Okay, what do we get? We get an object, a query object. Queries are first-class citizens. I can't emphasize how important that is to my small brain to understand a little bit better about the philosophy, what's behind CAP. We can assign that. We can run it. Let's run it. Await. Everything in CAP, everything's a service, everything's an event, everything's asynchronous. Let's run it. We've got that, okay? We can also, for example, assign it the books to a variable and pass that around. We can also, of course, then await that variable. We can also even extend, because it's an object, and it's a beautiful object, and beautiful things can be extended. I just made that up, I don't know what I'm talking about here. The books dot, for example, where stock is greater than 100, for example, right? And in fact, let's just await that straight away. So we can already start to feel closer to the core of what's going on actually underneath the surface. And I think not becoming one, that's a bit too zen, but becoming closer to the fundamental building blocks inside of the CAP machinery is a wonderful thing, and really, really helps me, at least, understand what the hell is going on. Okay, so that's enough. What time am I doing? 14:30. Okay, fine, we're good for time. So I want to look a little bit more at what a service really is, right? So we saw, for example, let's bring that back again, catalog service, log, service dot handlers. I might as well have typed it in. Errors there. We got all these handlers. Let's create a service from scratch. Let's create an empty service. Serve equals new cds.service. Okay? It's the same, but it's just got no handlers. Okay? But what we can do with the service now is we can send messages to it. You know, I think I'm speaking in small talk, which is a good thing. Small talk is a massive influence, right? So let's send a message to this service. So serve.send reCAP, for example, reCAP message, event, reCAP. What is wrong with my typing, for goodness sake, is awesome. Everything's asynchronous, so let's send it. Drum roll, nothing. Because, of course, there are no handlers to receive and do anything about that. So let's add one as simply as possible. At the moment, we've got, in fact, let's just type it in, serve, nothing there. So serve.on. Let's define an on handler. Remember the before and the on and the after. reCAP. And in fact, this is even cool. I was watching Daniel do the thing on the previous session, and he did this sort of, fat arrow syntax function. I got this cool console log. How about that? Is that not cooler than Daniel's? Just console.log. No brackets, no nothing. Okay, so we've now got a handler. Now I can send the same thing, and we get the output. We get a request. But the really, really cool, mind-blowing thing to my small brain is we've just done a serve.send. And we can see what the server receives, or the service receives. The object type, object with a small o, is a request. And we also get, we get the data, which is the method and the data itself. We get the payload, effectively. And we also get whatever else is in there. The second thing is we get this asynchronous function called next. Remember that? Next. But if we change, my voice is going high because I'm getting excited. If we change that to emit, everything's an event. Check it out. We get not a request, but we get an event message. And instead of getting as a second thing a next function to call, we get dummy. That's the difference that's the only difference in a service between an event, which is asynchronous, and a request. That's the most beautiful thing one of the most beautiful things in CAP, I think. Because the synchronous request response handling mechanism, the machinery, is in effect an interceptor stack where a given handler can say, right, I'm done, I'm the handler, that's it, and I'm not passing the next on, I'm not calling the next. Whereas the stack of handlers for an incoming event, every single registered handler gets a peck at the cherry. Peck at the cherry? Is that even a phrase? Anyway, okay, so that's the final thing in the service exploration. I do want to do one more thing. It's something that Daniel slightly touched on, but this, again, just hopefully gives you a taste of how comfortable it is to be in the REPL, the sorts of things that, is that my water? No. The sorts of things that you can do, and basically also the sorts of things you can't do, which I've not got a list yet. There's nothing you can't do. Yeah, Martin agrees. So, let's try this. In fact, let me come out of here and let me show you what I've got in here, npm ls. I've already installed the the SAP Cloud SDK HTTP client. Why have I installed that? Anybody know? Because basically for managing destinations, managing remote connectivity. The SAP Cloud SDK does the heavy lifting for CAP. Why reinvent the wheel? So we've got the Cloud SDK. Everything else is sort of standard, as it were. I did install CDS test randomly, but anyway, ignore that. So let's go into the REPL. Let's start a REPL session again. Okay, over here, I've got somewhere, Northwind. Who knows Northwind? Who loves Northwind? Keep your hand up. Oh, what are you doing? Anyway, Northwind is too big, so I've got North Breeze. See what I did there? North Breeze, we just got product suppliers and categories. I've got two other things as well, but anyway, North Breeze. So we've got North Breeze service, and let's connect to it. Let's treat it, let's think about it as a remote API. Well, it is a remote API, obviously, but let's treat it as a remote API and see if we can connect to it from this completely blank REPL session. By the way, I don't normally have my terminal in white mode, but I did it because to match this. It's quite cool. Anyway, okay, so cds.connect.to. How many people recognize that? It's a pretty cool function. So if we say, thank you, Martin, so if we say cds.connect.to, then we can give it a name. When we do, for example, a CDS import, you get a default name automatically. These names are sort of handles with which we can pick up these different destinations and deal with them. So let's call it North Breeze. Let me put it at the top of the screen because why not? And if I do that, didn't find a configuration for North Breeze, okay? That's not very helpful. I'm not giving it enough. I'm not giving the machinery enough to go on, okay? So I'm going to do that again. And instead, I'm going to say, well, what is it? It's a kind OData. OData. It's not GraphQL, not GraphQL. Did I say that again? Not GraphQL. And credentials, URL. Did I copy paste that? We go. Perfect. Right, okay. There. All I've done is passed in the minimum destination object effectively. This is the sort of thing you see in package.json or CDSRC.json or whatever you want to put it, but by default in package.json. That's all we need. In fact, let's just go here and assign that North Breeze equals await. Let's do that. Ooh, that was a swallow. So now we get this thing. We get this monster of a thing, which is, right at the top, a remote service. And for example, we can say northbreeze.destination. And there it is. It hasn't got a name because we haven't associated in the metadata that we've just given it in that object to the machinery a pointer to any sort of model information, which is where it gets the name from. But hopefully, that's enough. Now, we've constructed a query with catalog service.read, for example, which is the CRUD API. But Tim told you there's more than one way of doing it, and Daniel gave some examples here. We're going to say, for example, categories equals select. Let's select a category name dot from. I love these. What are these things called? These are called tagged templates. Who needs TypeScript? From categories. Okay, so we got that. Get used to the queries. The queries are the fundamental building block of everything, right? So we can sort of see that there. If we say, for example, await, is that going to work? No, but we can, well, let's try it. Await. Oh, sorry, not cats equals. Await. What am I doing? Can't execute query as no primary database is connected, comma, you idiot. So instead, we can just say nb.run, send that query across the wire, hopefully, cats to the North Breeze service, which is running on BTP, tick, to there, drum roll. Oh my goodness me, what an anticlimax. Everything's asynchronous. Await. There we go. And that's the end of my talk. Right, thank you very much. Right, so 2 minutes to spare.
So thanks so much, DJ. Don't you worry, your typing skills are top-notch, as are your timing skills, actually. We do have 2 minutes. And with that, is there a question in the room? Yes.
Hold on, I can throw the thing to Volker, and then he can throw it back.
And then he can throw it right back to make up for...
Oh, rubbish! Where is he?
I don't have a question, I just wanted the cube.
Cool. Any questions?
Try again.
think I said I didn't want to pose a question. I just wanted the cube.
So can anybody fulfill Volker's heart wish and ask a question so that he can throw the microphone right across the room?
Hey, Maya.
Whoa!
Not bad, not bad.
If not, ask me in the corridor.
I don't really have a question. I just wanted to. Here we go. Like, it was just really a snippet what you do, like, or what you used to do every Friday on stream. So if you are still interested in all those topics, just follow the developer's YouTube channel. Then you get much, much more, and you're much more interactive. So it's really worth it to watch DJ on his streams every Friday.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Marianne.
I mean, we have one more question down here, so can you throw it all the way back, please? Or just give it to Volker, he will distribute it anyway.
Cube distribution mechanism.
We can make that a full-time job for you, Volker, just if you're interested, right? Let me know.
I was going to ask for the Java developers, any advice for them to use it? Because I could see it could be very useful, but it's not quite as, natural to be.
I would love to be able to answer that, but I don't do any Java, so I don't know. However, rather than me give you some nonsense, rambling answer, go and see Robin outside, upstairs.
Sure.
And anybody from the CAP team doing Java? Anybody who put their hands up? Ben, go and see them.
Okay, because I'm sure that you could still, like a lot of these things would fundamentally echo and be the same.
Yes.
And you can go in here and investigate, even though you're in Java, and then jump back into Java world and explore that.
Totally. I mean, the building blocks are the same.
Yep.
Especially the philosophical parts of the building blocks, the queries, for example, queries as first-class citizens, everything is a service, everything is an event. Same idea.
Cool.
Thanks, Ben.
So thank you for that comment. We're at the end of the hour, and I want to give everybody the time to set up for our next session, which will start in 9 minutes. So see you back, everybody. Thank you.